A reflection is a mirror image. So as we're looking, here is a mirror image of Odie. He is reflected over the line. So he is a flip over the line so that he is mirrored. Okay, so let's look at what this means as far as math goes for today. As you're taking notes, a reflection is a flip. Okay, so another way to remember that reflection means flip is to look at the FL in the center of the word reflection and realize that reflection and flip both flip starts with an FL that you find in the center of the word reflection. Remember, there is a paper copy of these notes if you want to print a hard copy so that you can write over the top so that you have some good notes. Otherwise, feel free to draw it in your notebook. Much like what we did yesterday with translations, we're going to look at the steps that it takes to create a reflection. Okay, so step one is you identify key points in the pre-image. Remember, the pre-image is the image that you start with. So our pre-image would be the F that we find over here, okay? So this is our pre-image. And we are going to create an image. So we're going to create the image by reflecting it over the y-axis in this case, okay? So remember, reflect means to flip. So we are going to reflect it. We are going to flip this F across the y-axis. The first thing we need to do is find the y-axis. So we're going to take this F and flip it over the y-axis. So I'm going to look, when I do that, this image, each point maintains its distance from the y-axis. Okay, so the distance, so like this point, we're looking at key points, so the point in the upper left of the F is exactly 1 unit from the y-axis. So then when we draw our image, it's going to be backwards 1 unit from the y-axis, okay? So there's where our next point's going to be. We can label these points just like we did yesterday. We can say this was point A. So then we're creating point A prime, okay? So then we do another key point on our pre-image. Let's go down to the bottom. If we put point B down there, okay? So we look to see point B is 1 unit from the y-axis, so then the image needs to be 1 point from the y-axis in the opposite direction because it's a reflection. So we find 1 unit to the left, we label our point B prime, okay, because we're creating that image. Okay, we're just looking. I am not going to keep these little lines here that I've drawn because it will become confusing when I start playing connect the dots, okay? I was just putting those in there to show you how I find the distance. All right, so now I'm going to create another key point on this F. So I'm going to call this one point C. And I see that point C is 1, 2, 3, 4 units from the y-axis to the right. So then the reflection is going to be 4 units to the left of the y-axis. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to call this C prime. And I could do that with several other spots along that F in order to make the reflection. I'm going to connect these dots. Okay. And I see that from C, it goes down 1, backwards 2, down 1, over 2, down 1, back 2, down 1. And look, I did connect with my B. Okay, so this is your image. Let's take another quick look at exactly what we did here. So first, we identified key points on our pre-image. So I just plotted some points, identified them, And then I identified the distance from the y-axis because my directions told me to reflect the figure across the y-axis. So then I found the image. And remember that images are labeled with the little dash up at the top, which is read as A prime. So let's go ahead and put this down here. So image labels. The image label with the tick mark up at the top is read as A prime. That means there is one image of the original. Okay, the figure that we created and its reflection are both, they are congruent, meaning that they are the same size and the same shape. All right, let's look at some additional examples. Looking at another example, this one is the first problem from your homework. The point W is plotted on the coordinate grid below. Plot the point W prime, the reflection of W over the x-axis. What does that mean? That means we are going to take a look specifically at the x-axis. So I'm going to find the x-axis and I'm going to reflect W over it. Remember, reflect means how many, it means the same distance over what you're reflecting. So if I'm reflecting it over the x-axis, I find that from the x-axis to W is 1, 2, 3, 4 units. So that means on the other side, if it's down 4 units here, it needs to be up 4 units on the other side in order to come up with the prime as the reflection. So we went down 4 units to find W. So then that means our reflection is the mirror image, which is up 4 units. So let's take a look at the coordinates and what happens to those coordinates. The coordinates of W would be -6, -4. Okay, so -6, -4 are the coordinates. What are the coordinates of W prime? Well, we are still at -6 and we're going up 4 as the reflection. So W prime, the coordinates are -6, 4. So what happens? This tells us when a point is reflected over the x-axis, okay, the y changes. Notice the x's stayed the same, but the y went from -4 to +4. So the y changes. So what would you think if you were reflecting over the y-axis? Which coordinate is going to change? Yes, if you were reflecting over the y-axis, then the x value would change. Good. Let's look at another example. Okay, let's look at another problem. This one is the 9th one on the assignment. So this one says to reflect the figure over the line y equals 2. Okay, so what does that mean? First of all, you want to notice that there needs to be a line at y equals 2. So your y-axis, a line goes across at 2. That's what the line y equals 2 means. All right, so if we want to reflect that over this line, we do the same thing that we did before. We look to see how far the image is from the line. We're talking about the line at y equals 2. So this image is 1, 2, 3, 4 images up from the y equals 2 line. So then the line, we would need to have the reflection 4 down. 1, 2, 3, 4 down from the y equals 2 line. I would plot a point there. Okay, you want to label those so that you know which ones you are reflecting. That is great. So then we look at the next point. Stick with one color, I think. This point is also going to be 4 units up from the y equals 2 line. So then our reflection is going to be 4 units down. It does not like to draw. Okay, so we just have point C left to figure out the location of. So I notice C is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 up from the y-axis, from the y equals 2 line. So then that means the reflection is going to be 7 down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That looks like my reflection. I will tell you, I often want to check to make sure that I truly did reflect that. So I would look at my location of point C. It is over 5. So the location of point C is over 5 up 9. The location of point C is over 5 up 9. C prime is still at 5 and -5. Okay, now it's not going to be the opposite. Remember, the x's are going to stay the same when you reflect it over the y, but the y is going to change, okay? And reflect it over this line, the x coordinate stayed the same, but the y is going to change. And the y changes because its own, notice it doesn't just do the opposite because it didn't go over the y equals 0. It went over the y is 2. So I'm going to check that it went up 7 from there. So then from 2 down 7 is going to be -5. That is correct. All right, go ahead and work through this Ultimath activity and let me know if you have any questions.